founders, they have this FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, where they don't want to alienate one particular segment. They want to attract everyone. But if you try to attract everyone, you're probably attracting no one. Look, niching is not permanent, right? It's not like once you have chosen to niche into something, you cannot go back. And honestly, the biggest risk is actually staying broad and growing slowly rather than niching down and growing fast.
You are listening to This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, a product marketing community that gives back. I'm your host, Louise Liu. Product Marketing Hive and this podcast are supported by Product Marketing Edge, a technology product marketing consulting firm. In this episode, Gokul Kailasam shares his thoughts on how startups can gain early traction by niching down. Let's dive into it right now. Hi Gokul, welcome to the show.
Hey Lewis, how's it going?
Great. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your product marketing background.
Sure. I started my career in sales. Fun story, I was actually a computer science engineer, but I realized that I don't like coding and I hate debugging. But that's when I realized that I really love talking to people and explaining things. So I was an AE and an SDR. And at that time, I realized that a lot of the things that I was doing was actually product marketing, right? Like talking to users, looking at competition and differentiating from them was a lot of product marketing work. And that's when I decided I moved into product marketing. At the same time, I also moved from India to Netherlands. And I worked with a few European B2B SaaS startups as a founding PMM. And over the last 1 year, I quit my own job and I've been working with a few early stage B2B SaaS startups on things like product marketing and go-to-market strategy. And the fun part is today is actually my 1 year anniversary of me quitting my job and starting this thing.
Happy anniversary for starting your solo product marketing journey.
Thank you.
You've worked in the tech companies in India and Amsterdam. How would you describe the product marketing and startup landscapes in both places? And to you, what feels unique about each?
That's a good question. I think Indian startup culture is very fast-paced, and marketing teams are probably smaller. So you end up doing a lot of execution work, and you are not just a PMM. You also do a bit of content. You do a bit of ads. So I would say in India, at least in early to growth stage companies, PMM is not that well defined. And Europe is very different because here founders want you to be a bit more strategic. So you have all the time to really think about your ICP, your personas, your positioning, and then work on execution. Another thing would be in Europe, companies care a lot about compliance, data privacy, and security. So all of the positioning revolves around that. So yeah, that'll be the main difference.
Our topic today is niching down versus staying broad. At what stage of company's growth do you think this dilemma becomes most acute?
I think initially when you start, you probably have a specific use case, a few features for a use case, and you're probably targeting a specific persona or an industry or a geography, right? After you have like 10, 20, 30 customers, you start seeing new conversations, new inbound leads from a different persona or a different industry. And that's when you have this dilemma whether to go all in into the first use case or whether to serve like multiple use cases or multiple personas.
I think the decision niche versus broad is a fundamental product marketing decision. It is positioning. So that being said, from your perspective, what role should product marketers play in shaping the niche versus broad decision?
Good question. I think payments should drive the execution of this decision, but they are not the decision makers. That will most probably your C-suite, most probably your CEO or CSO or CRO, right? But we PMMs have a lot of data about our customers. We really understand the market and the product well. And the good thing is we go well along with product marketing and sales teams and customer success teams, right? So I think one of the key things we need to do is get them into confidence. So I would book separate meetings with your product marketing, sales, and CS teams to understand their concerns with this new approach with niche, and try to try to convince them with the data that we already have, right? And then later, I would say you need to have a separate meeting with your C-suite, saying that all of the teams are actually convinced, and then going to them with all the information you have. And then from there, niching is not something that is permanent, right? It's not like you cannot go back. So it's you can just sell this as an experiment, and if it doesn't work out, that's fine. You can go back to your original niche in a few weeks.
Thank you for sharing. So tell us a little bit more about the examples you have where niching down was necessary and how did that go?
Yeah, sure. I think I have a good example for this. So I work with a client called Amber Notes. So they are an AI meeting recorder, and when I joined them, they have a broad positioning. So something like AI meeting note taker for Teams or something like that, right? But the problem was this is an extremely crowded category with like 50 plus competitors like Fireflies, Otter, Granola, etc. So what I did was I listened to a few of these initial sales calls. A pattern kept emerging. The pattern was all of these inbound leads are from regulated industries in Europe. When I say regulated, that means think of fintech, healthcare, legal, things like that, like companies that really, really care about data privacy and don't want to use non-EU tools, right? So I completely changed the positioning of this product to focus more on data privacy and security for European teams, and that had a big impact on the pipeline and deals that we closed. So we started seeing a lot of inbound leads from people like CISOs and CIOs who really care about data privacy from European firms in these regulated industries, and our pipeline increased, but also our close rate increased.
That's a great example. Thank you for sharing. I remember when we first met, you also mentioned one other company that they expanded beyond their initial use case. Tell us a little bit more about that one.
Sure. I was working at a company called User Pilot, and I was a founding PMM there. So when User Pilot started, they started as a user onboarding tool. Think of your in-app messages that you use to onboard new users, right? So it was a very specific use case for like a couple of personas, like product teams or product marketing teams. But then they started adding new features. So they had product analytics, they had session replays, and suddenly they started competing with a whole new range of competitors that they were not competing with against, right? So there, what we did was we had like 3 or 4 or 5 different modules in the product. So we kind of went with the all-in-one route where we said that instead of buying 5 different tools and you need to integrate them, why not buy a single tool that sits across your whole product team, right? And that also kind of gave us a lot of inbound leads from new competitors that we didn't compete with earlier, and that actually eventually increased our ACV and win rate over a period of time.
If a product marketer wants to push leadership towards niching, how can they make the case internally?
I think you need to have your data in your hand, right? So you cannot go to leadership without that. So what I like doing is first thing is go to your CRM and look for patterns. So you already have like probably hundreds of customers you lost and won. You have hundreds of leads. So look for patterns. For example, which industries are they from? Are you closing customers from a particular geography or for a particular persona or use case, right? You might see that, for example, 80% of your revenue is coming from a particular persona, right? And in that case, it really makes sense to kind of niche down to that persona so that you can be very targeted in your messaging. You can increase your inbound leads and close deals, right? So with the data in hand, I would also look at your competition. I would look at what kind of competitors you have, how crowded the industry is, and are customers able to understand how you're different from the competition? That is a very important aspect because in a very crowded industry, customers don't know why they should choose you over competition, right? So it's a combination of your existing pipeline and existing sales numbers, but also looking at the market and saying, okay, this particular niche makes sense for us to for our growth goals next year. And that's how I go to the leadership team with.
When you see early stage companies trying to sell to everyone, what's usually driving that choice?
Ooh, probably they don't have a product marketer in the team. right? No, I'm just kidding. I think founders, they have this FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, where they don't want to alienate one particular segment. They want to attract everyone, right? But that actually backfires, right? Because if you try to attract everyone, you're probably attracting no one. So that's one thing, but also many companies and many founders start from execution in mind. So they are like, okay, I have this great product. How do we get 100 new customers? And they just think of channels. They think of whatever, right? LinkedIn, paid, outbound, whatever. But they don't think of your ICP, your positioning, your competition, and they directly jump into execution. So I think it's a mix of trying to attract everyone because you have FOMO, but also because you don't have the product marketing strategy in place.
On the flip side, what are the real risks of niching too early?
That's a good question. I can think of two problems with niching too early. One is you're niching down to a category where there are not enough leads. For example, it's really a small niche, like not many people in that niche, right? The second might be you are alienating a huge chunk of the market. For example, let's say your TAM is really big, right? But the niche that you have chosen is really small, and the 95% of your TAM cannot relate to that niche. So I can see these two problems when you niche too early.
What are the common mistakes you've seen people make regarding finding out the ICP clarity?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake is actually not thinking about your ICP at all and directly jumping into execution. Fun story. Last week, I was speaking with the founder, and they were like, "Okay, I need like leads, and I'm just gonna write some blogs. I'm just gonna create some campaigns on Meta and Google, maybe write some LinkedIn posts." So I think that's the common mindset that 80% of the founders have, and they don't even think about their customers. So you start with the strategy and then you go into execution. So you look at your ICP, you understand your positioning, you understand your competition, you figure out where your ICP hangs, and from there you go into channels. Say, okay, these are the three places where my ICP is browsing on the internet, for example, and I'm going to do, for example, SEO, outbound. That's it, for example, right? And from there you go into execution. So the biggest problem I see is actually not spending enough time on ICP and niching strategy.
How should product marketers evaluate whether a niche is big enough?
Hmm. That's a good question. I would say it starts from your existing customers. So are you already seeing some traction in this new niche that you want to niche down in? For example, you're already having some conversations with people, or you already have some closed deals in this niche. And then I would look at, I would just do a generic market analysis with, these ChatGPT or Claude, and look at this whole market segment. Is this growing year on year? Like, do we see our ACV increasing if we go into this particular niche? I would also look at the number of companies in this niche. Like, do we have enough companies to actually build a pipeline and achieve our goals for next year? And finally, I would also look at our competition. Like, are they growing? What is their messaging? Are they able to close deals? How's their churn like? So I'll kind of look at the market, the competition, and my own data to make this decision.
Some founders often worry that niching will trap them. How would you suggest product marketers to address this?
Yeah, good question. Look, niching is not permanent, right? It's not like once you have chosen to niche into something, you cannot go back. You can choose a niche for like a few months, see how it works, and if it doesn't work, you can always expand that later. I think that's how most of the companies grow. They choose a niche, they see if it works, and then they expand. I think for product marketers, like I mentioned, showing data to your founding team is really important. uh, uh, you know, uh, Understand where your current customers are coming from, where your ACV and win rates are higher, and go back to your founder with this data. And honestly, the biggest risk is actually staying broad and growing slowly rather than niching down and growing fast.
Any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things I love as a product marketer is being able to listen to a lot of our sales calls, right? So I love tools like Gong or Clary, where I'm able to listen. So I would say if you record these calls, go and listen to some of these calls, understand why you win and lose deals. Or if you don't record these calls, go join your sales team in their meetings. I'm sure they would love to have you there. And just try to identify patterns. You don't need to create like a whole PDF or anything. Just try to identify patterns on what kind of industries you're winning and losing, where is your win rate high, what kind of churn rate you have across different segments. And from there, you will start understanding what should be your niche in the coming days and weeks.
Great. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Louis. This was a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, a product marketing community that gives back. Check out our website, productmarketinghive.com, to join our community, meet fellow product marketers, and access free resources. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe and give a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. See you next time.